Welcome to another episode of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Thank you for coming back. Thank you for staying with us 2.5 years now. Oh my goodness. Or maybe you're brand new because you came to see Robin. That could be. And so, hey, I am your host, Karen E. Osborne. And it is so cool when my development life, my fundraising life, my philanthropy and not for profit life, and my writing life come together. Always love those moments. And that's what today is. Today, my guest is Robin Merle, and she is both an author and a fundraising consultant. Can't beat that. Hey, Robin, how are you today?
I'm great. And I feel the same way, Karen. When I discovered you and discovered that you were both in development and an author, I thought, how many more of there are there of us? And we actually found quite a few. But before we get into this, I want to say congratulations on the release of True Grace, which came out September 7th. And
Yes,
I am
thank you.
so in awe of your ability to produce one book after another and do what you do. And thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been so fun. And right before we came on, my first book, which is 2017, just got a new review on Amazon.
Oh,
Somebody
that's great.
found it.
That's great.
And yeah, so that's just so cool, that because I stopped getting royalty checks for that one. It was nice to see that somebody was still reading it. Anyway, let me tell you guys who are watching, and thank you again for watching, just a little bit more about my guest. So she is an author, a keynote speaker. She is a certified fundraising executive, and she works with not-for-profits, as I had done for many years, and health and education organizations. And she also has a focus on women in leadership, and we're going to talk about that. I
Mhm.
really want to know what she's thinking about that in at different stages of their career. So that's a great topic. So that's a great place to start. Why a focus on women and leadership and women?
Okay. So I seem to have a history of really being a person who is very focused on giving women power and mentoring women. I was the first class of women at Rutgers. There were 500 of us among 25,000 male students. I
Mhm.
took the first women's studies certificate, read a lot of women authors, especially from the Victorian era. And in my life as a professional, whenever I rose, I tried to take women with me and I would mentor and have them rise with me. Now we know in development, the field is, primarily women, but at the top it's not. And I
Mhm.
think it's very important, just like any kind of inclusivity that you try to do in any organization or culture, to have a diversity of perspectives. So that's why it was just sort of an organic and natural way of moving forward with a community.
That's so telling. That's beautiful. And like you, I've mentored so many, mostly women, but men too, over the course of my career. But we are a profession of 70%, 75% women, and yet at the top, your point, so many men. And when I became a vice president, I was not only vice president of a college, I was the first African American woman
Right.
to run a advancement operation in a majority institution. Yeah, so us helping people and bringing people up is so important. Um, so, out there working, toiling by yourself or toiling for yourself, I shouldn't say by yourself, but for yourself as a consultant, what do you love about that? And what are some of the challenges?
So I worked for organizations, mainly big hospitals, big universities, for over 30 some years. I was very well practiced in how to maneuver in those organizations and how to raise money for them. And actually, it was the pandemic that showed me there was another way of life. And I had been commuting for years between New England and New York City. And when I came back to New England, I said, oh, not toiling back and forth is really a good way to go. So I had actually started to explore consulting before I left my last job, because I thought this could be my next chapter. And I really loved it. And one of the things I love about it still is that everything I learned from these really almost corporately run fundraising organizations, I can pay forward. And I can bring that to small to medium-sized nonprofits, to nonprofits that don't have a wealth of resources, and they're struggling to do the right thing. And I can bring that forward. And I have experience in almost every vertical. I would say every vertical of an organization, having built departments. And I love doing that. The other thing I love is the time. And as you know, as a writer, you need time to write. And I heard myself answer a question the other day, and I said, no, I don't have a full-time job. I have a my-time job. And I realized that's exactly what I have. And so I'm able to structure my days and my time so that I can pursue other things like writing and reading in my life. Some of the challenges, I have to hold myself back from taking on too much so that I can be very astute at balancing the needs of each of my clients. And that conflicts sometimes with cash flow, which is always, difficult for consultants, making sure you have enough, enough cash to flow forward, let's say. And I also miss not continuing in some ways to see how the impact that we've driven, right, unfolds year after year. I miss that because I'm very tied to what the impact is from these wonderful, nonprofit organizations. And so I think the benefits definitely right now for me outweigh the challenges of consulting.
Yes. When so I was consulting for 27 years.
Yeah.
After a full career of mostly higher ed. And the thing that I missed the most was the joy of closing that big gift. That moment when the donor said yes. And I knew it was a transformational gift. I knew it was going to be something amazing. That was really the only thing I missed. It's interesting that you say about the seeing what happens. I think you'll find that as you've been doing this longer, you will find out, because those folks come back to you. Even when they move on to another job, they rehire you. It took me a while to learn that the client is really the person more than the institution or the organization.
Yes, that's right.
Because as they move around, like, oh, I should be back in touch with the Osborne group, So I think that you're going to get all the joy of impact.
Great. And I have to say that I take enormous joy when the deans and the presidents tell me they close the gift. Like, yes, that's so good. It is something that makes you feel really terrific. The other thing I want to mention, I know we're going to talk about this in relation to my book is called Involuntary Exit, A Woman's Guide to Thriving After Being Fired. The reason I bring it up now is because it also got me into coaching, or what I call career therapy. And it's a big part of what I do now, in addition to consulting on the straight fundraising, is really helping fundraising professionals find their way, navigate politics, deal with some of the difficulties of staying at an organization, and then if they have an unplanned departure, helping them get through that. And we know in development that it's a very tumultuous field. I don't think people realize how hard it is and how many bosses you have between the board and your boss and the donors and and everybody else. And so you and I are standing, we're still standing. So, and we like to give back. And that's another thing that I have enjoyed doing outside of the traditional fundraising consulting.
Yes, I'm so glad you brought that up too, because I have somebody who I'm recommending your book to.
Oh, great.
She was in touch and said, are you still coaching? And I said, no, but I always have time, that
Right.
I'm not selling that time anymore, but what do you need? And she just lost her job, and she was in that hurt moment, that,
Mm-hmm.
and so she'd called for coaching, but what actually happened was she just poured out all of that hurt. And so when I saw the cover of your book, I thought, this is a present for her. This is
Oh,
what
that's nice.
I'm going
That's
to send
nice.
her. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the book, you talk about clients coming back, or you talk about getting a review on a book you wrote a long time ago. It never occurred to me when I wrote this that this is an evergreen topic. That
Yes.
even though, and I know we're to talk about the business of writing, even though there are structured marketing campaigns and publicity pushes after you put a book out there, this one will keep going beyond any structured campaign, because the word of mouth from people like you or from people who are listening today, it gets around. And the reason is, in this book, I definitely, first of all, I had an involuntary exit, and my book is dedicated to understanding the emotional arc, the trauma, the
Yeah.
rage, even the shame that happens.
Yes.
This isn't a book about how to write a new resume. This is a book about, I see you. You're not alone. This happens to almost everybody. Don't think
No
it's
matter how good you are, no matter
no
how
matter
amazing
how
you
good
are.
you are. In fact, right, performance rarely has anything to do with it. And we know in development, the new leadership comes in, new board comes in, something comes in, and then you're suddenly severed from a community that you may have been with forever. I'm what I call a loyalist. So I've worked for places for 10, 12, 20 years, and that becomes part of your identity. And when you lose that sense of identity, you're just lost. So the book really takes people through that grieving process and how to do all the little things that we wonder about. Somebody just wrote to me and said, I'm going to a conference. What title do I put down? Right? How do I talk to friends about it? What do I do after they cut off my computer access and people are calling, are you okay? All of those little things I address. And the biggest takeaway from the book, though it doesn't feel that way and won't feel that way to your friend, is this is the biggest opportunity you never knew you had.
I so
Right?
agree with you. First of all, the description of the grieving process and the
Mm-hmm.
shame and the worry. I quit, but I quit because he tortured me to death and wanted me to, so
I
it
should laugh.
wasn't right.
Yeah.
So it is was an involuntary exit, even
Yes.
though I
Yeah.
quit. And I can remember walking out the door holding my little box of things and my tears just,
Oh,
flowing, feeling all that grief. And yet it opened a door. It opened an
right.
amazing door because I started my business, and the world changed for the good.
You're
So
a perfect role model for this. Perfect.
yeah, so this I know she's going to get so much out of your book. So when a lot of people that are watching, I'm so glad you explained all of that too. So a lot of people that are watching
Mm-hmm.
are would-be authors.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's, every time I'm talk any place I talk, somebody says to me, "Oh, I have a book in me." And it could be a nonfiction book, it could be a professional book, it could be a novel, it could be
Mm-hmm.
poetry, whatever it is. I've got a book in me. Um, but as you went through that process of deciding to write this book, of doing it, then having to market it, and all of the things, the business of being a writer, some of the lessons that you learned from that experience that you could share with our audience.
Sure. I should say I've been writing uh, since I was 6 years old, and this book decided to write itself. And I was there translating what it was writing. So I know that some people have a book in them, they go and they seek out writing classes or writing coaches and editorial, but I can just tell you that, my book spoke for itself. But the one thing I will say is that, and probably you are, and I think other writers are as well, I revise constantly, constantly. I might have had 25 drafts before I was done. Okay. And then my decision to publish was completely separate from the writing as it is. I just really wanted to get this down. And I started looking in the publishing industry. Now I have a Master of Arts in Writing from Hopkins. And at the time, everybody was competing to get into the best literary journals and the best magazines and all this stuff. And it was so overwhelming, I just stopped. And I realized I was back in that same trench, if you will. But I got lucky, and you'll hear this from a lot of people, and I think you also say you got lucky. When you start talking about your book to people, they kind of start recommending things. Oh, I published here, or you should talk to this person or that agent. And for me, I was concerned about making sure there would be no litigation around my book, even though I disguised everything. And I found a lawyer, and she was wonderful. And she actually introduced me to the publishing company, She Writes Press, that published the book, because she had seen the owner speak at an independent publishers conference.
Mm.
And one thing led to another. It's a competitive process, and you go in and they take you, or they take you on different tiers. But that introduced me to the entire business of publishing, which is so different from writing the book. So whoever's listening, enjoy the writing. The publishing is business as usual. You have to, take your feelings out of it and know that this is a business proposition, and publishing has a business model where they don't make a whole lot of money on you. So, but you have to put on your business cap, and then comes the marketing and the public relations, and that's another business. So you basically end up learning things, learning how to market from, and what you should and shouldn't do. And I made some mistakes and some I didn't, and and everybody is an expert, so you have to be careful about who you listen to, and maybe get a whole wide range of opinions. But ultimately, just like I was told when the kids were trying to go to college, they all end up somewhere. And your book will end up somewhere. And if you don't like the way it was handled, or you don't like the publicity, you've learned that. And so you go forward and you figure out how you yourself like to do business with these other business partners.
Yeah, so much wisdom in all of those words. The rewriting process. If you don't
Mhm.
like to rewrite, then don't write, because you right, because that is such a big part of being a writer, is having to rewrite. And then the other thing I wanted to just highlight that you said that was so important is about community.
Yes.
You and
Right.
I are both most fortunate that we are in two professions where people are generous.
That's
You know,
so well said. Yeah. Yeah.
when you find that when I find in development, everybody shares, people help each other, support each other. And then I find that writers, same thing, they help each other, they support each
Mhm.
other instead of, well, no, I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna give you the name of my agent because that'll somehow take away from, no, it's just the opposite. Let me introduce you to my publisher.
Yeah.
Let me introduce you. So we're very, very blessed, very fortunate that we have those kinds of folks.
And let me
I
just
think you,
say that
yeah,
I'm sorry. No, I was going to say that
okay.
our development skills help help in the business of getting published and marketing, building relationships and not pitching, but telling the story about why we think this deserves to attention. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I believe this. And the people watching who have known me for years, I think that if everybody practiced good major gift work, we
Yeah.
would have world peace.
No,
That's all
I love
about
that. I love
building good
that. Yeah.
relationships and being good stewards and being, there would be world peace.
So true.
That's my take on it. One of the things, you are a keynote speaker.
Mhm.
And I can see that just our two conversations that you're very good at it. And a lot of writers are introverts, a lot of writers, or just, because we toil away at our computers. And so the notion of having to do a book talk, having to present is could be kind of scary. And I wondered, as someone who, does keynotes and has been for years, do you have any tips for my worried authors who are watching?
Yes, I think when you're going to speak somewhere or to an audience, it really helps to go there either the night before or early to talk to people that will be in the audience, because then they don't become a silent mass of judgment to you when you're standing on the stage. These are people that you kind of know, and mingle with the audience, see what they're interested in, or just talk to them so that they become like we're having a conversation right now. It's a conversation. The other thing is, we used to talk about having sort of a lovey to keep little kids comfortable when they were going into a new situation or a new school. So my quote, lovey, is music. I love music. And so I would always request, if I could, walk on music that I love, because it would loosen me up, and I would remember where I heard the track, and it would just make me happy. And when you're up there speaking, you want to have fun and you want to be happy. It sounds trite, but that's how I feel. And if I can't play the music, I will have a tune in my head. And to go back to development, I used to do this at these big, high net worth individual meetings. I'd have a tune in my head. So how I wanted things to go. So I would walk in there and get all revved up and, be able to carry it through to the close. So those are two things that have helped me. I think that you have to, find what helps you. If it's just walking around the room and being familiar, the whole idea is to take the alien out of it and put the familiar into it. And I think that makes it a lot less nerve-wracking.
I love that ask them to play a, a song or a piece of music, because yes, that just lifts you up. It just gives you that bounce in your step
Yeah.
as you come, or just do it yourself. Listen before, because writers usually, we're uh, you're standing behind a table with your books at a some kind of a fest, or
Yeah.
you're standing in front of on Zoom or in person, a group of
Mhm.
readers. You just have that music to give you that bounce. I love that. And then the being on early, I would literally go around and shake every single person's hand in
Right.
the
Mhm.
audience, and then and then you just have that rapport. They
Yeah,
feel like,
yeah. Oh, totally. And one other thing about music. So after I wrote my book, I created a playlist for my book. So for each chapter, because, when you're going through something, you inevitably you pick out music that reflects how you feel. So I would have tracks for each section, the Loyalist Guide to Betrayal, great tracks for that one. And then tracks at the end on Beginning Again, and who can't stop listening to I Will Survive. But there are, and it's a lot of fun. And it's on Spotify under Involuntary Exit. You can find it.
you are amazing, Robin. That is awesome. That is so, so awesome. So we would be remiss if we didn't talk about we've been chatting much longer than I intended, just because you're so fun and so interesting. So, but we cannot say goodbye without you making some book recommendations, because this is what are you reading? What are you
Right,
writing? So,
right.
what would you recommend?
So I've been telling everybody to read Ann Patchett's Tom Lake.
Yes,
Have you read it?
yes, yes.
I love her writing.
Mm,
I adore her stories, and I just thought that this one was really, one of her best.
yeah.
On the nonfiction side, there's a book I don't know if many people know about it called by David Epstein called Range. And the subtitle is Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialist World. And he began sort of in the sports world. He also wrote The Sports Gene, but he began by, taking on Tiger Woods and Roger Federer. And Tiger Woods had a golf club in his hand, like when he was 2 months old. And Roger Federer played every game, every sport that he could. And the ability of Roger Federer to stay on task, not get injured. Also, he goes into that, and
Mm,
that's his opening metaphor. But it's just fascinating the case that he makes for us, all of us, to explore so many things. Right. To be in development, we talk about, oh, I'm a generalist. Well, I specialize in, one aspect of it, but you never get to see the full picture unless you are able to triumph over the specialist alley. And it's one thing that's important when you leave a job, that you realize I'm not just that
yeah,
job. I have
yes.
many dimensions to my life. And anyway, he's a wonderful storyteller. So I liked that book.
That's a really, I have to now add that to my list, because
Mhm.
my son, he's also a writer and a development person. And
Nice.
with his son, he told his son, you have to try all the sports
Mhm.
before you choose your sport. He said, you can
Very
choose your
smart.
sport and I will do everything, your mom and I will do everything we can to help you, but you have got to try at least six before you tell me this is the one. And they had a great time just trying out all these different sports, and then he landed on his one, and it's going to get him into college. It's helping him get into
What was
college.
it? What did he land on?
He landed on what his father loves, which is squash. He sort of is
Oh,
like
okay. Wow, that's a tough
everything
sport.
that,
Mhm.
yeah, everything that my dad does is pretty much what I like doing, is his. He doesn't like me to say
He
that,
might
but
not have known that though, had he not sampled so many
if
things.
he
That
didn't
that's great.
sample the
Hmm.
range, I love that.
Yeah.
Very, very important. I hope you have loved this conversation as much as I have enjoyed this conversation. This has been so fun. Robin and I had an opportunity to talk before this, and we
Mhm.
had such a good time
Yeah.
then as well. So I hope you had fun, and I hope you will return next week for the next episode of What Are You Reading? What Are You Writing? Thanks so much for watching. Take care.